Okay, everybody ready to go? Welcome. Welcome everybody. So I'd like to call the special meeting to order, and we would like to start with the Aboriginal Acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Knaha, Silix, and Sinix peoples, and is home to Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honour their connection to the land and rivers and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. And with that, I'd like a motion, just a moment, motion to adopt the agenda. And I think if it's okay with council, we'll move the mural request up to the top so that Sydney and our partner can leave if you wish, but just to give you a chance to get this over with, and if you want to leave, you're welcome to do so. So if it's okay with council, we'll move D up to A. How does that sound? With that, I'd like a motion to adopt the we'll start with the adoption of the agenda. Okay, all in favour? Carried. So we move for Councillor Charwood, Councillor Renwick, second. All in favour? Done. Okay, a special regular council meeting including items closed to the public on May 24th. Mover and a seconder for those. Councillor Renwick and Councillor Charwood. All in favour? Carried. All right. On to the next portion of the agenda, and we'll start with the mural on city property. And the Nelson District Arts Council has requested the council allow mural to be painted on the city-owned Parkade on 420 Vernon Street. It is now requested they approve or deny the use of the Parkade for the proposed design. And Sydney, you're welcome to say a few words if you wish, but there is a staff recommendation here, but come on up.
I can just
Jump into the saddle there. And
into the saddle. So it's a piece by a Nepali artist. Her name is Imagine. She goes by, that's her artist name, and she has her master's from Harvard. All of her murals depict Sanskrit, and she uses stencil as well as spray paint in all of her pieces, and she's just a very talented, epic artist, and we're really excited at the potential of having her. And if you have any questions, I'm super happy to answer them.
Amazing.
Love it. Beautiful.
so, go ahead, Councillor.
I would move the recommendation.
So let's be clear, when you say the east side, that's the back side.
No, it's
No,
the
the
north
front.
side. It's the front side, or east. It's north facing.
Front Street.
West
Yeah.
is,
It's on.
Yeah, right there.
It's on Vernon.
on
Yeah.
Vernon,
okay, I wasn't sure because east to me was like that way and
Did I
west
say
is that way.
east?
I just wanted to be sure,
It's
that's
actually
all.
on the north side.
Okay, yeah, I think it is the north side for sure. So.
Yeah, okay.
Eventually the east side though, if Jordan Martin has her way. So
Okay, great. So you're moving the recommendation?
Yes.
Seconded by Councillor Charwood. Any questions or comments?
I have a question after we vote for Sydney on another matter that we all received an email on, if that's all right.
Late item.
That would be,
Nothing to do with this?
should be on late items actually. So
Okay.
let's deal with this first.
Yep.
Cal, and we go
Sure.
from there. All in favour? Carried. Get your paintbrush out.
I will. Yeah, me.
Thanks.
Nobody wants me painting.
Get more
anything.
paintbrushes out.
So I'll just go wait until late items and then.
Oh, I see. It's attached to why she's.
Yeah, you probably
It
should.
has to do with murals, so
You probably should include it.
I
in there.
probably should have. That's my bad. I'm
Well,
sorry.
go ahead. Go
am I
ahead,
right?
Cal. We'll
Okay.
yield to that.
Sydney, I got the email from Bill and then your response, and thank you very much. And I guess my question is, what's it going to take, to get that happening? What can we do? I know it doesn't fall under the parameters of what you're doing exactly, and it's a little off the, out of your specific protocols.
Yeah, totally.
Right. But
yeah.
what can we do to make that happen?
So just for some
Context,
background,
please.
we're talking about a mural going on the old Civic Center, a sports-themed mural that Bill McDonnell and his wife Anne have been looking at having happen for the last couple of years. So we had talked about it initially when there was the public art funding that was available through Columbia Basin Trust, which was what we accessed to the City Hall mural, which was great because they had, a 40,000 commission styled. So it's just a matter of funding and finding funding to make that happen. And I've told Bill several times it's a challenge with BC Arts Council and Canada Council because really we're supposed to be giving artists that creative liberty to do what they want and create what they want to. That's where our funding caveats are kind of tied with those entities. However, I've been searching far and wide for a funding model that we can use, our funding opportunity where we can make this happen. So it's definitely been on my radar. It's a very large wall. And initially I know that there were issues with like with the roof and with rain that would drip down the face of it. So there was conversation around if there had to be like flashing put up and things like that. I'm not totally sure where we're at. I think the roof has probably been redone since that conversation happened. So I can talk to the facilities manager and see, but it's definitely just a more expensive project. Like, in order to do a commission, usually we give artists full creative control. If people want to have a commission done on their private buildings, we ask the artists to name their price for the commission. And so commission fee can be anywhere from, $15,000 to $50,000 to more, if you want to be specific about the content that they are creating. And so, so we're just trying to find a space for that, but it's definitely on my radar. That's why we haven't looked at painting that wall at all to date, because I'm saving it so that we can find cash so that we can make the sports mural happen. So that's kind of our end game, is to have that happen, but it's definitely it's an expensive wall. So, because that piece could end up being the city hall wall was about $40,000, so it could be $40,000 plus, at least. Oh, and that artist had creative control, so that wasn't a commission piece either. So he got to do what he wanted to do with that work. So it's just all about finding the right person and that price, and then finding the appropriate funding. And unfortunately, CBT's public art fund dried up at the start of the pandemic. So so we're just waiting to see if that comes back again or if there are other opportunities. But it's just really challenging with the funding that we're able to access.
Can I follow up?
Oh, yeah.
So Sydney, sorry. So what you're telling me is, the minute we say we'd like a sports themed mural, even though it would go through a panel of jurors and what have you, because we're saying it's sports themed, that takes their creativity away from an artist to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But we're not saying that. We're just saying that's the theme that we want. We're not telling them what they have to paint.
Yeah, we don't put any parameters around what the artists are creating when we're hiring them, just because we're not able to pay them those commission fees. But as soon as you start to be like, I want the Hume Hotel murals, let's just say, for instance, then that starts to change, what artists are willing to do for how much money. And when they lose that creative control, that's a huge aspect of their work. And we find that when you put those parameters on, sometimes the quality can suffer as well. And so, because they're not doing what they are moved to do. So
what we have to do is find an artist that likes to do sports themed murals.
Which is super challenging too, because we had over 635 people apply for the festival this year, and we're always kind of keeping an eye on that. And so, so I'm assuming, and sports themed is very vague, it could be many different styles of mural, but it's just been a challenge to kind of find that money. But we're definitely, I want to make that happen for Bill, and I totally hear, but for the community, not just for Bill, but
know that it is near and dear to Bill and Ann, and they would like to see something happen there, and I think a lot of people would. Absolutely. Just because of the history of that building. So.
Yeah, and there was a plan to do a mural on there, and it didn't end up following through because the funding ended up drying up and it wasn't available. So, but it's the same kind of a situation. It's really, really challenging to find. The big money funders aren't wanting to fund those kinds of projects right now.
Thank you. Thanks, Sid.
Sydney, could you help Bill just set up a GoFundMe page?
Yeah, totally. We can work on something like that for sure. It's just a really large amount of money, and so it's challenging when you see things like the Tramway Society has their GoFundMe and those kinds of things, and just to oversaturate the community in that kind of a situation. But I think that there is definitely going to be a time and a place where we can make it happen. It just hasn't arisen yet.
Yeah, that's somewhere. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Kevin, you're right about the flashing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was efflorescence that comes through that wall as well, or the concrete. There was quite a bit of scaling from the numbers of coats of paint that have gone on there over the years. And I think we might have come up with some kind of report. What the preparation alone was a big ticket item just by itself. Mm-hmm. But it'd be nice to get back and find that out so we know what we're dealing with. And you know, I really want to thank Bill for keeping this in the forefront, because it probably the biggest canvas we have left in town is sitting there on the end of that building, really,
Absolutely.
at the end of the day. However, you know, these things have to be community driven as well. And if you can't access the granting because of, you're going to lose the
creative
artist's sort of
control,
creative
totally.
control of it. But at the same time, I have to agree with Councillor Renwick that, you know, you could give it, you know, an artist could look at that building and, you know, if we were to supply them with the history of the building, how it came about, what it was used for over time, I'm sure they'd be able to come up with something that would reflect the building as a whole. So
Yeah, I totally
I
agree.
wouldn't want that to stop us moving forward with doing something with that, because you can see that corner from, like, one of the things that Bill did right in there that hit the nail on the head was when you walk up Hall Street, it's one of that big gap right there as soon as you pass the Rio's video store now. That's a big gap right there, and it's pretty bare looking. And it has been talked about way before the complex was built, actually. There was talk about doing a mural that would return around that corner. So, but those are good points that we need to keep in mind. You know, what can the wall accept a mural? Can we get the money to do a theme mural as such on there? And is there an artist available that's willing to find some creative way to do that?
Absolutely, yeah, and I'll definitely have a conversation with the facilities manager, and we can look into the history of what was already inspected with that, and yeah, but even paneling, like putting the panels on like we did on City Hall, that's a huge expense. It needs to be fully engineered. We needed to have like a full crew come in because my staff couldn't do that. We are not at that level, so it's just a really large project. So I'm just gonna look for a large pot of money, and we will make it happen. But it's definitely on my radar.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, not a problem.
Yeah, I think the only other thing is it is a separate lot that ultimately will be developed behind.
Inside,
Behind. So that, you know, the intent is not for that big space to remain undeveloped forever. So I know that was a bit of a question as well. Do you know, if you don't do it on panels, do you paint a mural on that will ultimately be blocked by some type of development?
Yeah, you have to take all of those things into account, and that would apply again to what I would call the southwest wall of the Parkade as an example. That property's been sold now too, so potentially that'll be blocked as well. So.
Yeah, we had a conversation with the new building owner, and he said he wasn't sure what he was doing with this space, but yeah, we left that wall alone this year and had talked to them about it, so yeah.
Okay, well, thanks very much.
Not a problem. Thank you all very much.
Take care.
Thanks, Sid.
All right. Onward and upward. Thank you. The city's annual report. And I think, did everybody receive a copy other than what they have in front of you here?
Was it in our mailboxes, probably?
Any questions that popped out of that, or comments, Kevin, that you needed to be, Chris?
Chris?
Turn it over to
Yeah,
Chris.
sure. So we have a couple of reports that are kind of have a financial statement inclusion piece. One is the annual report, and that's required to be presented at a public meeting before June 30th each year. Financial statements are part of it, but I mean the major piece is, you know, what were the city's goals and objectives for the coming year, and you know, what were their accomplishments in the preceding year, and kind of highlighting those types of things as a recap of the year. And I just want to say, you know, Ginger totally revamped this year, and I think she did an incredible job. I know Kevin helped a lot too, and all the departments.
No, not actually. Ginger took this one on her own.
She did a fantastic job. We've had this same sort of format in place for decades. I don't know, and she really took a look at it and said, okay, what are the things that we need to have in here? And you know, financial statements got to be in there. Permissive tax exemptions need to be in there. There's some core components that have to be part of this. You know, goals and objectives and that sort of thing. But what are some pieces that we really want to highlight and showcase? And I think it's a great sort of document to have to go back on, and I use mine quite frequently to go back and look at things from prior years and just sort of see how we did. Some of the statistics that she's compiled in here as well will be interesting as we go through to be able to compare year over year on some of these pieces. And you know, just some of the the highlights, I suppose, that are in here that don't show up in the numbers of the financial statements, that are things like, you know, how many meters of water line did we replace, or 350 meters of overhead power lines converted to underground for Nelson Hydro, or 595 hydro poles were tested in the year too. That you're not going to see those things in the numbers. We talked earlier today about things we want to do at Cottonwood, and you know, highlighting some of the grants we got. $350,000 for kind of improving Cottonwood Park and the entrance and the washrooms, and some of the great work we've done in securing grants. So I just yeah, it's a great document to kind of go back and take a look at.
And I would just add, we've been able to achieve all this, during a pandemic, during a heat dome, during windstorms, during wildfires. So a big shout out to our community and our employees, and certainly council support of moving these things forward, because I think at the end of the day, for us to be able to keep moving those things forward during these really, really challenging times is a testimony to everyone in the organization and in the community. So a big shout out to everyone, and I think Ginger did a really good job of capturing that. And these are highlights. These aren't all the other things that we do, especially the day-to-day things of what we do. But and I really liked how she laid this out in terms of the council strategic priorities and those 4 pillars, and how we're advancing on each of those fronts. So I thought it was very informative, and gives certainly people a snapshot of what we did in 2021, and I think council and staff should be proud of the work we've done.
Thanks, Kevin. Any comments?
Nice looking report.
Pardon me?
Nice looking report.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I add to what Kevin said. I just want to add that Colin McClure was a big part of getting us through that as well. And he's not here; he's no longer with us. But I just want to give a shout out to Colin also for his good work over the time he was with us as well.
And Len McCharles and
Len McCharles,
on the emergency management side of it was clearly
chief. And
so a lot of
people contribute, including the council. So sometimes you sit in these chairs here and you go through the bi-weekly meetings, etc., and you rarely do you reflect too much on some of the outcomes of the decision you make. But when you look through these reports, and as you said earlier, this is an overview of some of them. A lot of good things happen, and we're so fortunate to have a great staff that are able to implement the decisions of council and make so much stuff happen in our community. It's amazing, actually. All right, with that, does anybody want to move receipt of the report? Councillor Lochtenberg, second by Councillor Renwick. All in favour? Carried. Thanks very much. All right, Sophie report. Let's say, Chris, you're back in the saddle again, wouldn't you?
Yeah, so this is, again, the financial statements are an integral part of this report. This one has to be actually filed with the ministry by June 30th. Again, it has the financial statements that we've seen in prior meetings, but it's also contained in the annual report, financial statements, but has some additional disclosure pieces that we're required to include. The main things being council remuneration and any expenses paid on their behalf, as well as any staff with salaries above $75,000 have to be in the report, with any, again, expenses that were paid on their behalf. And vendors, any vendors that we paid over $25,000 to in the year have to be shown on the report. I think we talk about this each year on the remuneration piece. That list, because the $75,000's been on there forever, that list keeps growing and growing each year. At some point, every full-time employee is going to be on that list. It's just, but again, one of these things that's the threshold, and it's been that way, and it's kind of how it is. interesting because kind of looking through it though, you know, when you have the vendors, the employees. I mean, this is all money that, you know, is kind of coming back into the local community. If you look at a lot of those vendors, are local employers, local folks operating those businesses. We're able to get, you know, looking through the annual report, some of the grants we're able to secure, they come at a federal level and able to employ local contractors and folks to do that work. So I think it's that piece is very important. But yeah, this is, again, just that kind of final reporting piece that we have for the year. And then we can start looking at 2023.
Perfect. Thank you. Questions? Hearing none. Chris highlighted probably one of the clearer pieces, and that's the amount of purchasing we do locally and the wages that we spend. I know, Colin, that you've worked hard at Public Works to make sure you're getting your products local if you possibly can, and being able to have a competitive market too. Of course, we're sort of locked into that as well, but at the same time, it's good to see that. And the wages and benefits that we paid out here at the city, these names, every one of them you can see are living in and around our community as well. So thanks very much for that. So a motion to receive the report and adopt the Sophie report. Moved by Councillor Charlwood, second by Councillor Lochtenberg. All in favour? Thank you. All right. Canada Community Building Fund, Strategic Priorities Fund, and Liquid Waste Management Plan. And Colin, you're speaking to that one, I imagine?
Yes.
So we're looking for support for a grant application here.
We are.
And you're going to give us a little bit of
Give you a little bit of background and that. Thanks for having me here this evening. What the report is for is to seek the council support for me to apply to the Strategic Priorities Fund to have a liquid waste management plan produced. The liquid waste management plan is something that the program guide has identified is something that's applicable for the capacity building stream, is what they call it within the Strategic Priorities Fund. A liquid waste management plan is a pretty complex consultation process, and the reason why we need one, I'll get to that as I give you a little bit of background as to where we are and how we got here. So, of course, I think everybody here is aware that we have a wastewater treatment plant that's located down at Groman Narrows, and the plant was a primary plant for a lot of years and then was updated to a secondary plant. One of the things that's kind of unique about our situation is that as we changed in our plant designation and as things evolved, typically there would be a renewal and you would get a new permit is what you would get to operate at the plant. And for a variety of reasons, it's a very complicated history. There was a bunch of things that happened or were supposed to happen, and in the end, it's been decided that we would keep running on this old permit. Now, although we are running on a permit and it is valid and all those things, the problem is that in order to do a major retrofit, which is what we're forecasting is going to be required to our plant, it's kicking us into a threshold where we're going to be triggering the need for what's an environmental assessment process. Now, the environmental assessment process is something which, if you were going to be putting some kind of technical mining facility in, or you were going to be building a smelter, or you were going to be engaging in large industrial activities, that would trigger an EA. And of course, the purpose behind that is to get all of the community consultation, to get the technical consultation, and to make sure that you've done everything right in order to get there. Part of, or the one part of things where a city is affected by this is that wastewater treatment plants, just because of the nature of how you can cause pollution from a wastewater treatment plant if it's not operating or designed properly, they also fall under this environmental assessment process. However, because it's realized that this is a, kind of a process that's been really tailored more for an industrial, applicant who's looking to do a big industrial project, they've made a provision in that for liquid waste management plans, which are something that municipalities would do. So what a liquid waste management plan allows us to do is to undertake the consultation process ourselves, and that leaves us in the driver's seat as opposed to us paying a bunch of fees to the environmental assessment office and having them run a process and providing us with here's the outcome. The nice thing about the SPF funding is that a liquid waste management plan is eligible for the funding, and so we've got an estimate that we've been given for performing a liquid waste management plan. This would occur over about a 3-year period is what it would take to do this, and there would be a lot of consultation and technical input that goes into this. So it's about $395,000, which is all funding that we can have funded under the SPF. I looked through the EA fees guideline, and I looked at the fees that would be applicable to us if we were to follow that process, and there's $270,000 in fees that we would be up against. None of that is eligible for this funding. So what I'm looking for is some support from council to me to make an application to the Strategic Priorities Fund for the production of a liquid waste management plan. And one of the requirements of making such an application is to have a council endorsement to do so. And so that's what I'm here and have before you.
So Colin, before we get to questions, just so I'm clear, did I hear you saying that would we do this in-house?
We would, I guess, be the ones that would run it. Of course, there would be a lot of technical help that we would have, and of course, a proposal that I was given outlines consultation help as well as technical help that would occur. And so we would, of course, be engaging people to help us with this, but there would still be a fair amount of time that would be required just in the consultation end of things. And certainly there would be city time, a lot of city time that would get spent in doing this as well.
Thank you. Councillor Lachtenberg, did you have a question?
I thought we were moving for the.
Oh, you were moving?
But-
Okay. Well, okay, mover and a seconder, and then we can have a question. So
Great.
You're going to move?
Great.
And second by Councillor Lachtenberg. Okay, questions or comments?
To the mover first.
Yeah, to me?
The mover,
Yeah.
and then the seconder, and then Councillor Page.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Colin, for that presentation. I know you're expecting this pushback likely is that idea of if we're not going to follow the formal environmental process that is assigned and we're taking responsibility for that. You've just acknowledged we don't have in-house skills there. You said in particular with consultation, which I agree if we bring, I'm all about localizing decision-making as much as possible. So I'm supportive, yet I just want to hear more about what you think that the consultation dollars would be used for, because I would suggest that it's not just for the consultation piece within our community, but also with that environmental piece that I think we've seen. And then if I could do a follow-up kind of related question, there's discussion in this report about our official community plan as well as our water source protection plan, both of which are due for updates. So how does that factor into the decisions that this might bring forward?
Okay. I'll try. If I don't
That's
remember
a
the
lot.
second part of the question,
Sorry,
please
yeah.
please do remind me. I'll try to get the first part. I'll see if hopefully I can retain all the rest of it. So part of the monies that would go into the consultation, of course, is to get you want to have a good cross section of people from your community. So you're really looking for community values. There's a large portion of it that, of course, is looking at kind of who are our neighbors that would be affected by this. So downstream, users of I guess it's the lake/river. You have First Nations input that's very important to all of this. And then a big portion of it is a technical exercise. And so there's a lot of technical experts that get assembled as well as regulators that are invited to come and participate in this. And so there's a very wide section of consultation that goes on. So the monies are to help with the persons that are leading the consultations as well as for the technical experts, as well as there's, in order to hold the meetings and all that, there's there's monies required for that. There could be along the way, there could be if there's something that comes up in specific because something's identified, there could be some more environmental work that they'd like to see specific. So a report that could be tailored towards something specifically. But yeah, a lot of it is really going to be the time that it takes to do it and to pull all this information together. And so that's really where the funding goes. I have a proposal. Due to the dollar value of this, we wouldn't be able to just go with a sole applicant on this. It would be something that we'd have to open up to the public process. But they spelled out the kinds of things that would go on within a liquid waste management plan, and we would certainly be looking for somebody who is experienced in delivering a liquid waste management plan. I think the city of Vancouver has them, and there's a bunch of other cities that have them. So we'd have to find the right people in order to do that. Okay, now I'm trying to remember the second part.
Community
the
plan
official community
and
plan
water
and
source
protection plan. So interestingly enough, with the source protection plan, we've just begun some initial conversations with Whitewater Ski Resort because part of their master plan involves bringing the Silver King chair up to the ridge, which of course increases the potential of persons to come into our watershed. So of course we're going to work through that with them and make sure that we're talking with our regulators. Part of the source water protection plan already identifies that as being something that can happen and does happen. We see it from that perspective as being something that's not a high risk item and it should be something that's manageable. But we're really happy that we have the plan and that the plan worked as it's supposed to, and that they've made their approach to the province, and then was identified that, wait a minute, there's somebody else that you need to bring to the table and have these discussions. And so from that aspect of things, I think that shows that the plan's doing what it's supposed to do and making sure that those connections happen. Right. And so, yeah, we're just getting started with them. I believe that, I'm sure that we'll be able to be successful in working with them on this. And you're right, the plan is due for an update. I can't remember the exact date on it, but yeah, it is up for a renewal there. Yeah.
But there's also the official community plan, which has been identified as needing update too. So how does that affect?
Well, within the liquid waste management plan, I guess the piece where the official community plan would come into play is taking a look at kind of what you're looking at doing in your city. So as part of our official community plan to expand our industrial sector and have a lot more of that, and then have different effluents that would be affecting our plant. No, that's not in our plan. I'm just throwing that out there as a wild example. But it's that kind of thing that they're wanting to look at. So, I guess our official community plan could also use an update. However, I'm not aware of anything that's a radical departure from what our existing plan has. And so I'm not forecasting that there would be something, a big surprise that would come out of that would have impact on this process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Colin, thanks for this. I have a concern a little bit, and I'm sure you'll set me straight here, is that this liquid waste management plan is focused on upgrading our sewage treatment plant as opposed to upgrading our sewage management system. In part, there's a couple of things that I think I want to hear your perspective on. First is, it seems to me we've talked quite a bit about the amount of water we're sending into the sewage treatment plant is way more than it should be, theoretically. And that upgrading the sewage treatment plant without dealing with that first might be premature. And so, given the enormous cost of upgrading the sewage treatment plant, would we not want to make sure that this grant application is really focused on upgrading the whole system rather than just that sewage treatment plant?
That's a very good point, Councillor Lautenberg. Part of what's been ongoing for the last, I guess it'd be a little over a year and a half, is that we have our sewage master plan is being updated. And so a lot of what you're talking about there, as far as, having input that's coming from the stormwater system into the sanitary system and the kinds of flows, is all being talked about in the sewer master plan. And so within that document, it's going to identify things that we should be doing and upgrades and things that need to be made to our system. Because you're correct, if you can control and have much more predictable loadings that you're going to be having at the plant and not having the impact of rainwater where you're diluting the material that's coming in, but really increasing the volume. You know, you're really wanting to keep a sewage plant in a steady state. It's a biological system that's going on, and so you're really wanting to keep that steady and not having these dynamic swings. And so within the sewer master plan, it's looking at all those kinds of things. You know, what's going on with our different lift stations, and is there things that we need to do there? What's going on with the influx of stormwater drainage, and then taking a look too at some of the places where we're getting loadings and how is that affecting things. And all of that information will very much help in informing, you know, plant design and as well as this work. And so I see the two of them as kind of really dovetailing together quite nicely.
Okay. And can I have a follow-up on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things I noticed when I was reading the legislation on this, or I guess it's the guidance from the province on how to develop a liquid waste management plan, was that there's this 22 cubic meter volume per, I assume per dwelling, per building, I'm not sure, per person, whatever, that we do have some power over coming up with alternatives depending on IH and their inputs on, or Ministry of Health, I guess, to maybe do some on-site processing, which would be very exciting if we could figure that out. Again, just given the insane amount of money we might spend on the waste management plan versus some creative alternatives, including on-site processing, we might do something, save a lot of money. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Well, that's a really good point in that I think what we should be really trying to find is the best way to deal with the various elements of it. You know, you could decide, you know, we'll just let it all run through the system and deal with it all at the end. Well, you're going to have to design a pretty robust plant in order to handle all that, and it's going to have to be able to handle all these kind of, you know, swings in levels and in nutrient loadings and all of that. Or, like you're saying, you can really go to places where you are seeing, you know, the hotter loadings that are coming into the system and get them to do some pre-treatment to help offset what you've got. It may wind up being a much better cost savings to really, you know, address certain places and to have those kind of improvements made, just like with, you know, the infiltration of stormwater into the system. You know, it may make way more sense for us ultimately to just deal with it at the primary end of where it's getting into the system, as opposed to trying to accommodate for it at the end of the system. And so again, I think that with the items that we'll get out of the sewer master plan, I think that we should use those, and then that should be the objective, is try to figure out what's the best way to do this and the most economical way of doing it. I don't believe that the most economical way of doing it is to build a huge plant that can handle, you know, huge loadings, because to me that would seem like probably the most cost ineffective way to do that. And I think that some of these other things are actually going to have to be part of the solution in order for us to get there.
Great, thanks.
Good questions. Any, Councillor Page?
Yeah, thanks, Colin. Going through the documents on this particular one, something that stood out to me a lot was the conversation about plan area and regional growth strategies. So how will we be figuring out our future growth and the ability for some of these rural areas and what they're going to have impact over the next 50 years?
Then that is a very good question. We've for the purpose of the sewer master plan update, our planning department has given us kind of the forecasted growth, and so there's been a forecasting that's been done in there. But I really think that through this consultation process, that's going to be really important to find out what is, you know, forecast and what is going to be that population. I can't remember what they are giving as what they believe the ultimate city build out will be offhand, but it is a pretty substantial increase in persons living in town, because really what they're wanting to ensure is that we really set ourselves up well for the next 50 years, and that this isn't, you know, because it's recognized this is a major investment that is very important to the city, and that we need to ensure that, you know, this is something that's going to have a lot of longevity to it, and that we're going to get our treatment value out of this.
So one of the pieces here, because we're at early stages of this particular liquid waste management plan, I think is an opportunity for us, is to reach back out to the regional district and E and F, given the kinds of development we're seeing all along this part of the arm in the first place. Because the plan, the same planning document, guidance document, speaks a lot about how the regional districts can come forward and implement these same plans on a district-wide level that includes and incorporates municipalities, much like we would have done the same for the housing needs assessment and been part of some of their work. This seems to me to be an opportunity to say, how can they be part of our work, or how can we have a liquid waste management plan that actually thinks about what's going on in ENF as well, and our impacts both upstream and downstream. Because if we were setting up for 50 years, there's going to be a lot of growth. But maybe this is a place we can say, regional district, would you like to collaborate so that there's a liquid waste management plan for this district?
Yeah, I think that would, sorry. Yeah, I think those discussions are, where do we see growth? Where do we see this plant servicing the current rural areas? I do believe, and Colin, I don't know if you've been involved, I know we've had discussions around their liquid waste management plan. So certainly understanding where they're at with that. I know Castlegar's worked with them quite closely on some aspect of that. But yeah, no, for sure we need to understand that, and I think that consultation and that build out, where does that happen? Obviously, our plant is is out at Groman, which can it serve that area? Does that area make sense to be part of the city ultimately? Just to allow that growth to happen with proper servicing. But that's the challenge, right? Looking to do a 50-year plan with sort of all these uncertainties of growth. We can certainly look at how the city, based on our OCP, but as Councillor Charlwood knows, and I know living out in the Blewett area, there's not even an OCP for that area, let alone any plan on how that area would grow out. So it makes it really, that's a really good example of how challenging it is for us to plan when you have these vacuums out there of no planning.
Okay, you can always ask that question if there's any interest, I guess, but if it's going to slow down the process, then let's say if the answer is yes, then we move on. We work with it. If the answer is no, we move on. Right? Because I've seen these conversations take many, many years to materialize, and we have a situation on our hands. So there's a couple of things come to mind, Colin, is so you're actually looking for approval to get a grant to do this study, basically.
That's correct.
Tonight. So we're sort of off on a little bit of a tangent here around that, but important questions nonetheless. I noticed on the report earlier, the annual report, it showed our ENF or the ENF area, like the population as an example, but we know from stats that have been taken over the years that our population doubles most days in the city of Nelson. So we go from 11,000 to 15 to 20,000 people for the most part, and we're particularly in the busiest times of the year. So that adds further burden as well. But and that, of course, is always taken into account when you do these studies. But the other one was, and I think it was touched on a little bit earlier, was the separation of storm and
sanitary.
And sanitary, right? So that would be a goal regardless.
Absolutely.
Going forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what about the actual location? Because we know we've had challenges over the years with that pipe going under the water that has to be serviced on a regular basis, which includes divers, et cetera, to manage it. And, have we explored any ideas around relocation, or is that the right place? We know from the tour we did, the footprint's fairly small out there.
Yeah.
Will we get that information out of this report?
Yeah, what we'll get, I guess, some of what you're requesting, I believe, will even be coming in the sewer master plan, in that it looked at where, is the force main, rightly in the right place, or should it be something that's on land, or, should we be needing a force main and constructing a plant elsewhere? I mean, of course, as soon as you go to resite a plant, there's a lot that you need to go through with that, because a lot of folks aren't necessarily open to the idea of having a plant closer to them than away from them.
They want the toilet pretty close, don't they?
They certainly do want that to continue working, absolutely. One of the things, and again, it's not that it's completely something that's impossible, but one thing that I do see as being a real challenge in this with the existing site is because it is so narrow and it's a very small site to work with. While this process is going on and you're putting your new plant into place, you still need to continue treating everything else, and so just in trying to think about, well, how could we do this and make it work, that part with that site could make it again, not impossible, but I think it would be a very there'd be a lot of parts that had to all fall together to make that work, because you'd literally have to leave that running while you're able to do the upgrades. And so I would think that could be a challenge. I know that they've thought about, does it make more sense to find a new site that doesn't have the same physical limitation on it, build the plant, and then make the tie-in, and before you decommission that site. Ultimately, I don't know if that's the right answer, and I guess part of what a liquid waste management looks to is, what would our community think about that? Is that the right thing? What do the technical people think about that? And so I really think that these are all the questions that we really want to get solved through this, and we really want to get it right. But I do, forecast that in doing it at the existing site, that it would be quite a challenging project just from the sheer logistics involved with it.
It seems to me we had to take equipment in there on a barge on the last project.
I believe that's correct, yeah.
Couldn't get down there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Colin. So at the end of the day, if everybody's okay with where we're at, all in favor? Application, pardon?
Yeah,
We did, yeah.
yeah.
Moved and seconded.
And seconded by Lochtenberg.
And this is application for $395,000. Good,
All right.
thanks.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I believe I'll be back a little later here to talk about the Rosemont Park when they come give their presentation.
Excellent.
Excellent.
All right,
Look forward
thanks a
to
lot,
that.
Colin.
We'll see you later on this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Colin.
All right, I think we're pretty well done there. There was no late items, so a resolution to close the meeting to the public. We have a